Next speaker is Andrea Perissi, who will going to present sensitive PFAS analysis from edible produce on Xevo TQ-XS after QueChERS extraction. Please.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. So, in order to define the best argument for the speech today, we explore different cases, different topics, and the final decision was to speak about analysis of PFAS in food matrices. Why? Because so regarding the environmental part, there are several methods already developed. It's true that the regulation of PFAS is evolving, but also the solutions are already evolved. And for this reason, probably food analysis on PFAS should be the next frontier in the routine analysis lab. And for the reason today, I speak about this kind of application and what is to solve this kind of analysis. So we try to answer up on this question during the presentation, why we are looking for PFAS in different food matrices, in which direction the regulatory body are moving, and which instrument and configuration would suggest to reach the analytical target. And we explore also if we need different approach for different food commodities. And we will see two different approaches, one for vegetables and one for fatty matrices. So why PFAS in food? PFAS can enter in the environmental through many routes. And of course, contaminated water, soils, and biosolids are often used in food production. Thank you. And PFAS uptake and bioaccumulation in food supply is could be a risk. To date, most of the analytical effort have been focused on PFAS throughout the environmental matrix. So, as I mentioned before, we already developed several methods about the identification and quantification of PFAS in water, wastewater, and other environmental matrices. But okay, thank you. And the estimation of PFAS exposure for food sources is rapidly increasing in food safety evaluation. And also regulatory bodies are moving to find and to identify some quantitation limit in different food commodities. And they suggest that there are certain food commodities that are most susceptible on PFAS contamination, like milk, eggs, and fish, for example, because there are matrices that are rich in fatty matrices. Right now, there are not official limits for the determination of PFAS in food, but there are just some recommendations. The first regulatory body that are published something about determination of PFAS in food was FDA in 2019, and their approach was to use QueChERS, and they evaluated just 16 PFAS, carboxylated and sulfonated, and they add some new congeners of PFAS. And for the sample prep, they are using QueChERS followed by dispersive SPE. As usual, for example, for pesticide determination in food, they publish some guideline in terms of how much amount of sample that people are waiting in the lab, and how many ml of water is enough to rehydrate samples, and to follow then the so recently, just last May, the EURL, a European Reference Laboratory of Residual, published a table. You can see the link in the slide, and they suggest some determination limit for the most famous PFAS, like PFOS, PFOA, PFNA, and PFXS. And as you can see in the slide, the limit of quantification are very, very, very low, considering also the complexity of the matrices and the difficulty to determine this kind of compound in this kind of samples. So for this reason, we start to develop a method basing on our knowledge developed in the past for environmental samples. And so we decided to use an high-end triple quad chromatography, the Xevo TQ-XS, for reach this kind of level of quantification. And so we use a triple quad coupled with a UPLC class, and is mandatory for this kind of analysis, equip the system with the PFAS kit in order to eliminate any kind of background contamination of PFAS. Legislation evolving, but also our solution evolving, and this year we present several news in terms of instrument, in terms of solution, and we don't have time to speak about that during this presentation, but if you want in the booth, we have the latest application note on PFAS with the new our system, the Xevo TQ Absolute, and also LC system evolving, and we launched this year in order to increase our product line in terms of UPLC with Acuity Premier. Anyway, this kind of work was developed with the Xevo TQ-XS. And why we need to modify LC for PFAS analysis? So PFAS are ubiquitarious contaminants, and we need to trap the systemic PFAS before the injector. And the solution is quite easy, because we just install an isolator column, a C18 column, after the pump mixer, in order to trap the contaminant from the system, from the environment, and dilute it at the end of the gradient. In this way, we don't have any kind of interference in the proximity of the retention time of the PFAS. You can see in this slide that without any LC modification, you can see a background of PFAS signal. Using this kit, the blank is really blank. And especially when we need to reduce the limit of quantification, is mandatory to have a very clean blank. So the solution is easy because it's just a column, but it's important to use it. Moreover, we try to eliminate any Teflon part from the system, and we use PEEK. For example, for the solvent line, LC solvent line, we use PEEK and not Teflon, in order to decrease as much as possible the contamination of PFAS. So in terms of instrumental method, we were lucky because we already several methods to analyze PFAS in environmental matrices, and we use the same condition that we already developed for other PFAS methods. We changed just the injection volume, because usually when we perform a water analysis, we are able to work on also increasing the injection volume. In this case, working with dirty matrix, we try to inject less samples as possible in order to mitigate the matrix effect. But for the rest, all the parameter LC and IMaSS are the same, already developed for water analysis. Our strategy is to try to develop a simple, efficient method for extraction. So we are concentrated about the sample prep. And regarding vegetables, we started from FDA method using QueChERS extraction, followed by dispersed SPE. And for fatty matrices, suggested by URL as more critical for PFAS contamination, and taking in account that URL decreased dramatically the detection limit of PFAS, we started using different approach, SPE approach, because we need to eliminate interferences. PFAS, unfortunately, are try to stick in on the fatty matrices. We need to find the best solution to extract that and to eliminate any. To summarize, we split into different methods. Fresh product and milk, we use QueChERS and DSP, and for meat, fish, eggs, and other kind of matrices on this with this kind of composition. Sorry, we start with alkaline digestion in methanol, and we use SPE cartridges in order to purify. In vegetables, in order to develop a robust method, usually we start testing different kind of commodities. Some with high water content, like lettuce, high starch with potatoes, or matrix that are acid or rich in sugars. In order to testing this kind of panel, we are sure that the method is robust for each kind of commodities. And so, as you can see, QueChERS is very easy to use. Is very close to what we do in routine for pesticides. The protocol is very simple, and our idea is to extend the panel of compound to determine it in a single run, because as you know, PFAS world change each year. Each year, legislation are changing, and many other congeners of PFAS are introduced in the legislation. For this reason, if FDA take in account just 16 PFAS, we have already developed a method for other matrices, and we start to include more PFAS in this kind of study. And we can divide it in 4 classes: carboxylates, sulfonates, emerging, and precursor. And we evaluated the recovery and the accuracy in quantitation, taking into account this kind of 4 classes of PFAS. When we speak about PFAS, we speak also about isomers, because there are several congeners on PFAS that have some isomer. The most famous one in terms of isomers is PFOS, and we are able to separate with this chromatography also the branch isomer on PFOS. In terms of sensitivity, this is a slide in this slide we have different matrices, and the chromatographer extract at 0.05 nanogram per gram. And this analysis was performed before the recommendation from URL, but we are quite confident that we can reach the sensitivity that the URL published in last May with this kind of chromatography and with this kind of operation. So, speaking about recovery, we don't have any problem to reach enough recovery for different matrices in different for the different 4 classes of PFAS. And in terms of accuracy, as usual in this kind of analysis, also in environmental, we are able to be accurate if we run isotope in dilution with internal standard. As you can see, without internal standard, we are not so close to the real value in terms of quantitation. Using internal standard, we are very close to the real value. Using internal standard is quite common in this kind of analysis, especially when sample prep is performed, and we try to use the same approach that we are using for environmental matrices. The advantage to use also internal standard in the quantitation that you can avoid to prepare matrix match calibration curve. You can work with external calibration curve and correct the signal with internal standard. So if we increase the sample complexity, we try to develop a total workflow for the sensitivity analysis in fish, meat, and the metrics mentioned before. As I said before, alkaline digestion is used for the extraction because we use VAX SPA. Why use anionic exchange SPE and not C18? Because PFAS, so in the PFAS world, we have a very polar compound like PFBA, PFBS, that are not retained in normal C18 cartridges. These cartridges work in a mixed mode, and we can taking advantage of hydrophobic interaction and ionic exchange in order to extract, purify, and quantify PFAS. So I put in this slide a summary of the sample prep method. So we work at pH 6 and then activate the cartridges and elute samples and with higher pH in order to get enough recovery for this compound. We can also dry the samples and dilute the samples in order to inject it in the LC-MS system. You take into account that this kind of the dilution factor in this kind of protocol is 5. So when we speak about 0.1 nanogram per gram in matrices, we are injecting just 20 ppts in the vial. So for this reason, our choice was to develop this method using an high-end tandem quad, because when we are working with dirty matrices, the best way to create a robust method is try to dilute as much as possible in order to avoid matrix effect and reach the analytical target in a very robust way. So the chromatogram is quite the same, because we are working with the same compound that we use for vegetables. And in this slide, you can see a salmon extract spiked at 0.1 nanogram per gram. 0.1 nanogram per gram is the limit that URL published in the last recommendation. So we prepare for the routine analysis for this kind of matrices. We try to participate to some circuit in order to quantify to be sure that our method is robust. And as you can see, working with this for PFAS, and in this panel, there are some very lipophic PFAS, so they are the most challenging to extract in this kind of matrices. We were accurate in the quantitation. To complete the job, we purchased some beef liver and eggs from a local grocery and try to analyze using the follow this protocol. And we found PFAS in higher concentration. Consider that the limit of a URL are just 0.1, and we found 0.5 PFAS linear, and we are able to detect also the branch isomer of PFAS. We have to take in consideration that right now branched isomer are not included in the regulation, but it's also important be prepared and be aware that we are able to detect it. So, to conclude, the using of SPE is recommended for fatty matrices, and for regarding QueChERS, it depends. Depends because regulations are changing, and we don't know which kind vegetables. Anyway, we have ready because we have already prepared 2 different protocols, and we have the solution for each matrix. So, as I said before, the use of isotopic dilution is important to be accurate in the calculation of PFAS concentration in samples, and without using matrix match calibration curve. So for the routine analysis should be an option. And we don't have just solution for food. If you want, on the boot, we have some of these application notes. If you are interested in water analysis or in other in application, you can reach out in our booth outside this room. And so, thank you for your attention. And
thank you, Andrea. Is there are any questions? No?
I do have a question. Thank you very much. I was wondering what's the current availability of analytical standards for all these compounds, including the branch stuff,
So,
including the butylated analogs?
yes, there are several suppliers of PFAS standard, and they are updated. The Wellington is probably the most updated company that purchases standard on PFAS. Also, the new one, GenX, C604, are included in their list, and also surrogate and internal standard. They are quite so updated. Thank you.